Good evening. This is Everett, Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my studio. Now I'm in the studio tonight. I'm going to do a drawing, and it's going to be a transfer drawing on a piece of watercolor paper. And I think you'll find it interesting what I do, how I do that. I got a few extra tools that I use, especially in a kind of a drawing like this. And I'm going to use this drawing. I'm going to use it for my watercolor painting demonstration tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So I think you'll find that interesting also. So let me go over to my painting table. Let me show you some of the supplies I'll be using. Now this is a picture of what I'm going to draw tonight. It's a sailing ship, and it has two main masts, and it has four sails, and it's out in the ocean. Okay. That's what I'm going to draw tonight. Let me just show you some of the tools that I'm using. Now, over top of this picture or reference, I have a grid, and it's a 3/4 inch grid. Each square is 3/4 inches in size. Now, these are available at Everett's Watercolors on my supply page. I had these made up especially for drawing. But you can draw your lines across your picture. That's what I've done in the past also. You can draw lines across the picture, but this is much more convenient to have a grid to lay on top. And I've got it taped. I've got the reference picture taped down with artist tape, and I've got the grid taped down at the top so it doesn't move. Also, I have a 12-inch C-Thru ruler. Now this is really nice, and I'll show you how I use this in a few minutes. This is called a C-Thru ruler. That's called C-Thru. Also have an eraser. Probably won't use that too much tonight, but you always have an eraser in case you want to remove a pencil line or something. I also have a mechanical pencil. You can use a straight pencil, whatever you want to use for drawing, but mechanical pencil, and I'm using a softer lead. I'm using a 2B soft lead. It makes it easy to make a line, but I still draw very lightly when I make a line anyway. But it's also easy to erase. And I'm using it tonight so you can see the 2B shows up a little better on the video, so you can see what I'm doing. Now this tool here, this is very interesting. I don't use this that often, but tonight because of the detail I'm going to be looking at, this is called a proportional divider drawing tool. Now let me spell that for you. It's P-R-O-S-P-E-K. Now I have all these items listed in my comments section or my description section below in the description of this video. So I got the description of what this is and how to pronounce it. Proportional drawing tool. Let me show you how that works. This 3/4 inch that I have here, and this grid is very interesting. Grid is very important because right here, when I put this over top of a reference, I count the number of squares. Just for example, 1, 2, 3, 10. There are 10 squares from top to bottom of this picture. That's 10. And across, there's 7 squares across the bottom. And these are 3/4 inch size squares. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my picture on the drawing board a lot bigger. Not a lot bigger, but bigger. So what I've done now is I've gone ahead and I've set this up where this proportional tool, there's 3/4 inches, and I've set I made the setting here in the middle, which will give me the proportion of, if you look at this, it gives me an inch. It gives me an inch. So when I transfer a particular size over here in the picture, it'll go to my drawing this size. So I'm increasing the size of the object that I'll be looking at. So this will help me pick out some areas here that if I want to get more detail. Okay, so that's what that's used for. Before I move the board over, let me explain a few things here on the grid. When I place the grid down on the picture, I try to locate some points that intersect the squares. For example, this point here intersects, so that's a point that I can pick out. As I look down the picture, I also see another point over here at the tip of the bow, over here. And there's a section right here where the grid crosses right here. So those are points there I can pick out right away and put on my drawing. So what I've done on this, let me bring the board over on the other. Let me get the overhead camera. Is that light better? I think we can see that better. Okay. Now, if you look at the paper here, I've got the grids. I've got the grids all marked in. Now, this C-Thru ruler. Once I go down here, this is a quarter sheet piece of watercolor paper, which measures 15 inches long and 11 inches wide. So I'm going to make my drawing. And I know there's 10 squares here, so I'm going to make my drawing inch squares, which will make it 10 inches high, and it'll make it 7 inches wide. So every square here will equal to an inch over here on the drawing board. Okay? So 3/4 inch here will equal an inch over here on the drawing board. I'm sorry about that. I had the wrong camera on there. Sorry about that. Let me go over that again. The grids I marked here are 1 inch squares. And what I do is I took my C-Thru ruler and I measure off. There are seven squares over here, so I have 7 inches over here. These are 3/4 inch squares. These are 1 inch squares. So these 7 squares here equal 7 inches over here on the drawing. Now vertically, I have 10 squares here, 3/4 inch size, but over here I have 10 1 inch size, so that makes it 10 inches up here. So my drawing is going to be 10 by 7 when I finish, by transposing all these marks over here. Okay, now what I've gone through, and the C-Thru ruler is very handy, because once I mark off, say down here at the bottom, I mark off my inches, then I just move it up, and I can draw the next line in. And I can see through, I can see the line below, and I draw the next line, and then continue on. Because these dividers on here are exactly 1 inch squares. So I'm making 1 inch squares here, or 1 inch blocks here on my drawing. Then I can go the other way and mark the horizontal lines. Once I get a line drawn, then I move over, I draw the next line, move over an inch, draw the next line, and so forth. So with a C-Thru ruler, I can see the lines as I move up the page, or across the page I can see the lines below. So it makes it easy to draw the grid. And I draw these in very lightly, because once I get my drawing in, then I'm going to erase all the lines that are not necessary. And remember, this is watercolor paper, and I'm making this drawing over here to do a watercolor. So I don't need every detail from this particular picture. I just need enough detail for me to give me a good reference in which to use a brush and do some painting. So really the biggest areas that are most important are I mentioned before, there are 4 sails. This large one here, there's a neck size sail, then there's a smaller sail here, and then the rigger sail, a jibber, out here on the front. Okay. And I can see the 4 beams. So what I'll do is I'll start, now, as I said, I start at the top here where I know that the intersection is done. And I come over here, and now that's 2 squares, 1, 2. And I come up here, 1, 2, and I'm at the very top. So that marks that point right there. So that's a reference point right there. Then I can come down, and I know this point over here. So let's pick this point out here. I'm a 1, 2, 3 squares up. 1, 2, 3, and I'm at the very outside. So that point there is right on. Now, when I draw a line, let's say this first post here, this main beam coming down, I can look at the proportions here. For example, this one here, it's about one third of the way over. If I look at the next second line down, it's about 1/3 over. And I come down, this section right here is not quite half, and it's not quite halfway. So I can locate that about right there. So I can draw that line in. And I'm pretty confident that's the line it's going to be. Now let's get this sail over here. I'll draw that in, for example. This corner down here is 2 squares down. Here's 1, here's 2. And it's right at the intersection. There's another point. That intersection is right there at the corner of that sail. So that's a good point. So I come down 2 and I'm right here. And the top of that sail is right there. So I come over here and I approximate it's a little bit past the half. That's just about the halfway point. It's about the halfway point. So I can start that there. So I can draw that line in, and it's got a little, it's not a straight line, it's like I've got a curve to it. So I can put a little curve to that. So that gives me that mark right there. And now this sail has a beam. A beam is right here, this corner. That's 1, 2, let's see, 1, 2, third square down, 1, 2, 3. And it's right here. And it's just beyond that line there. So I'm picking this point up here, approximately right there, and it goes beyond, so it's about this far away. Now let's draw I can draw that little shape in. That's the mast that's holding the top of that sail. Now, okay, now let's go down here. I can click off these points very quickly. This point right here is not quite half, it's about right there. Now this one is over half, so I go over here. The next point down is further out, so it's right there. Then it's almost straight down. It goes back, it starts to curve in. And the last one here is about the same angle. Let's check me where I am. I'm 1, 2 and a half squares up. 1, 2 and a half squares up, so it's right there. So I can draw that line. I come in here and I can go from this point, follow those dots. It's got a slight curve to it. Now this will be an approximation drawing, and that's all I need. Just some reference points, because this will be painted on top of tomorrow in the painting. Yeah. Hi Lucy, glad to see you. I'm giving you a little bit of design work here for tomorrow's painting, and using special tools here. Now this grid is called a grid method of finding locations of a drawing. So I'm following a grid here on the painting, on the picture, and I'm transferring that point over here to the drawing on the watercolor paper. So this one here, it stays down below here. Now here's a good point here. This beam stops right here. 1, 2, into the third square. So 1, 2, 3 right here, and it's up above the 3/4 point. So I can draw that line in. That line there is the beam. This straight line. So what I've done so far, I've just about defined. Let's get this sail up here. I'll get that one. I come down from this beam here. This continues on. The masts are very important in a sailboat, of course. The mast and the sails. And this one here, this one comes down about, I see the point, it's about right there. And it will come down to this corner. It'll meet right here. So I can draw that in. It's got a slight curve to it. So right now I've drawn in this top sail and this main sail down here. 1, 2. Now we'll work on the other sail. Let's see. I've got one here. Let's see. Where's that? Let's get the mast. The mast is 1, 2, 3, 4 squares over. 1, 2, 3, 4 squares over, and it's right here. And it's on this side of the square, and it goes up about not quite halfway. So let's go at the point. Then this is nice because this point here intersects with that third. So I'm I'm 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm over right here. That point there, that intersection right there is the same intersection I see on the photo. So that one, that lines up very nicely with. I can draw that line in. That's another mast. That's the second mast. Second mast. I said mask. I mean mast. And I can draw that in. Okay. Then let's see. Let's get this bottom part here. This is about halfway on that square, and it intersects with this. Intersects with that square. So that's perfect. So I draw that line, and I extend it on. Now I can draw in this sail. So the top sail here is it intersects this line right here, intersects that line there, and then it goes down to there. So I can draw this in. And this continues down, and it goes about right here. And this sail then continues on. This has got a slight bend to it also. So there's a second sail. I've got two of these smaller sails up here. Now I can draw this one in. So this one here, let's start at the top. I'm there. Come down a square. It intersects right there. Come down one more square. It intersects a little bit further out. This is almost straight down to this square. And it's just above that beam I wrote. So I can draw this one in. So this is going to come around here. It's going to have a slight curve to it. Okay. And now it has a beam. It has a beam also. And it's just, if you see this, you can't see this line here. I'll bring it up to a close-up in a few moments. Let me get a couple more lines in. This one's just below here, so I can draw this one in. Again, for a painting, I just want to have, again, this gives me a good way to draw something and give it proportion. I'm just trying to make an accurate depiction of this particular sailboat. So if I get the sizes and the shapes of the mast and get the size and shapes of the sails, then it'll look good. I want to get the proportions and the sizes correct. Now this little sail here, there's a third sail. This little sail here is right on that line. That's a 1, 2, 3 squares up. 1, 2, 3 squares up, and it's right in the middle. That sail intersects right there, and it goes up. If I follow the line, it goes up here, then it goes up here, and then it intersects up here. Well, that's wonderful. Okay, so I can draw that line in. Now, there's some shadows in there which I'll pick up later. Just wanted to get the sail shape in. Okay, I'll get one more. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna take a break here, and I'll bring the picture over so we can take a little more look at it. Yes, the grid lines are there just for a reference. The grid lines I draw on watercolor paper. I take the grid lines, draw them in. They're 1 inch apart, and then when I'm finished with the drawing, then I erase the grid lines. They're just for references. Okay. And then this sketch I'm going to use for paint. I drew this on watercolor paper, so I'm going to paint on top of this watercolor paper. That's why I transferred this picture over. The picture is going to be transferred here. I'm going to paint on this tomorrow at my 2 o'clock program. Let me come over. Let's review. Let me come over and review that little section there. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to bring this over to close-up. You can see the picture a little better. What I was referring to. You can see here these intersections that I picked out. Where the lines cross is where you want to pick a point. For example, this line here picked that point. And as I went down the sail, I was measuring approximately how far over. For example, this sail right here is right in the middle of this square here. So as I cross the intersection, and then as I move down, the intersection here is closer on this side. So I move the point to here, and then further down it gets a little closer. And this is almost a straight line here. So when I drew that straight line, I knew it was okay. And then this little sail over here, I found the point up here. It's the intersection right there. I found that point, and I drew it down, and it was a little bit over from the line, a little bit further over the line as I come down, and still a little further to the bottom. But it was nice. It intersected with this line here very nicely. So I had some reference points there, very easy to find. Okay. So let's go back over to the overhead. Okay, let's go back here to the overhead. Okay, I got 2 sails in. I got two more to go. Well, one of them was almost hidden, so I was really not just almost academic about that one. Okay, let's pick this front sail out here. This front sail out here in the front. Big, long, straight line. So the first point that I'll pick up is right up here. There's a cross section. It's right there. It's 2 squares down and 3 squares over. So 2 squares down and 3 squares over, right there. So I come down 2 squares from the top of my drawing, 1, 2, and then I come 1, 2, 3 squares over from the left side. And that intersection is right where that point is. So that locates that point there. Now, as I come down on the slope of that sail, I'm going to approximate. This is about 3/4 of the way. It's more than half. So I'm going to come down 3/4. So I measure over 3/4 approximately. I'm using my just eyeball it. This one crosses halfway. So that's a halfway point. I'm looking at all the intersections with those lines. And this one's a little less than half. So it's about right there. Now this one intersects there and there. And this one comes right down to that point. Now I could take a ruler and draw that straight line. I mean that's really almost, if I look at the picture, I could take a ruler and draw that straight line, okay, from there to there. But I'm going to go ahead and draw in with freehand. So I'm going to just draw those lines in, and I'm going to smooth them out a little bit because I know this is almost a straight line. So I'm going to freehand it all the way up to that point. There. Okay. Okay, that's the front sail. But the back, it's got a back side to it, which is it's a very thin up here. So we got the point here. We come down. It's about the halfway. Yeah, halfway. And we come down. It's getting closer to this side. And as it comes down, it crosses over halfway. See, halfway points are easy to find. And then it goes over and comes very close to that corner right there. Then this swings around and it swings out, and it'll come at about right there. So this has got a curve to it because this is where the wind. The jibs always have they're the ones out in front of the forward sail. So this is going to have a little bend to it. I'm going to free draw this one in freehand. So this will go in, and this will slope down, and this will almost straight to the top again. Okay, so I drew that freehand in there. I don't need to make a straight line, not a perfect straight line. Now again, this has a curve to it. So I know the end point's there, and I know the end point's there. And let me find the middle point. The middle point is right, it's a little bit higher than that side, so it's right there. So I connect that with a curved line. A curve, I go up, and then I come down, arc it a little bit, and then come down to the other point. So that gives that nice shape to that front sail. I love that. Nice curved shape. Now this sail here, which is partially hidden with shadow and so forth, there's a fourth sail. But I can see the point. The point's up here where all these intersect. So there's one here, there's a point there, a point there. It comes down, and let's see there. I think I already got that one selected. Yeah, that one there. Yeah, I already pointed that one out. Okay, cool. It's going to work out fine. Yeah, this line I drew here is really this third sail, because the second sail is behind. So this one's in front. So this line right here is what I drew in right there. And I'm probably not going to put in the shadows tonight. I can make little dotted lines or something to show the shadows here. But I want to get the shapes of the sails. For the painting, that's all I'm really interested in. But let's get this front edge here. I've got the front edge of the sail. This one here, I come down, and it's a little past half, about right there. And then it goes right behind this sail, right here. And then it goes behind this sail, and you don't see it again until you come across here. And then it continues on down to this line here. So this is almost a straight shot also. I can almost do this freehand. So what I'll do is connect the dots. I'll go in here, and then it picks up here. I can freehand that in with those dots there. Okay. And this has a little curve to a little angle to it also. It starts here, and the beam is right there. The beam. Okay, that's the one that connects. And these 2 points here are connected. So this point here comes up here, and there's there. Okay. And this one over here is going to be behind. So this one kind of gets hidden. There's a beam here. And this big beam out here is okay. So right now I've located all 4 of the sails. I've located the big back sail, the middle sail, big sail. I've got the little one in the middle here, sail, and then I've got the jib out here in the front. I've got 4 sails. I got the mast. Okay, and I'm not going to worry about these long lines that hold the sails up straight and so forth. I can get those in separately. Now the next part is I get the boat in. So what I'm going to do here is start out here with the bow, and it comes down. It connects here. Let's see this beam here, right halfway. So it comes down here about halfway. So it's straight, and then it goes 1, 2, the second square, and then it continues. There's a nice intersection right there. Perfect. That intersects right there at that point right there. Now it starts to curve down a little bit more. It goes down. Goes down to here, and now it starts to go the other way. Starts to curve up. So this is the bottom of it, and I find that that's about right there. And then this is going to go past. Let's see. It's going to go this part right here. So the back of the boat right there is in the second square end, 1 and 2, and it's about 3/4 of the way over, and it's right that point right there. That's the back of the boat right there. And then it curves down. Let's get the back of the boat, the shape of it. It's going to come down and cross over this line, and then it goes down into the water, not very far, about right there. That's the back of the boat, and the rest is all waves. And on the front, let's get the front of the boat here. We got the, let's see, second square over, right here, and just above the square is where it starts to go in, and it's about less than half, so it's about right there. And it curves down. It curves down, and this will be connected. This will point the bow that connects to the sail. And what I'll do now, maybe I'll just approximate some of the waves. Now, the waves themselves, I'll probably do a little freehand and watercolor tomorrow. But basically, I can get the shapes in here. I just draw in some wave shapes just to get the idea of where they'll be. This one comes up maybe up to here, and it goes over, and it comes down. This comes over and down. It stays about right there, and these all come like this. So I'm just approximating these. These are going to be different when I paint it anyway, a little bit. I don't have to follow exactly. I can just have an approximation. But there's a wave out here. Let's look at the horizon. Where is the horizon? The horizon line is right behind the boat. On the right side, I see it over here. It's just above the back, just past the back of that. So it starts here. That's very important to find the horizon line. So that line right there is a horizon. I'll mark an HZ or HL, horizon line. And it comes across, and of course there's a wave out there, so it's going to wave a little bit. So it shows here a little bit of wave. So I'm going to bring it up here about this point, and it comes down about right here. So the horizon is not a straight line. It's going to be the curve of the ocean. Now there's a couple other points here I might want to draw in before I stop here, but basically I've got everything I need. Now some of the structures down here, I'm going to just indicate here. For example, this mast that comes down, it continues on to the boat, so I just draw that in. There's a connection here, and then it comes down about the middle of this square. It comes down, so I indicate that, and the other mast comes down, and it goes below this beam over here, and it's about almost to this point here. So I'll draw that in. Okay. Now there's a few shapes down here. There's a couple figures here on the boat and so forth. I can kind of put those in, but right now I'm just going to make a little notation. There's a little boat here, on a little skiff or a little boat that's on top. Let's just draw that in real quickly. Just the shape. It crosses that line, yeah, there. Not too much detail. Just indicate that there's something there. And then there's part of the structure back here. So there's a storage box or somewhere to keep their gear in. Keep it waterproof for all the water that's going to be coming over. So I'll draw that in. It goes back. And, okay. And there's also some ladders here, rope ladders that goes up and down. I'll leave those alone also. And up here, even at the top, you can also indicate here at the very top, that's square number 9. At the very top of the drawing, there's a little flag up here, so I can kind of indicate that. Just draw that. It takes that whole. It goes across the whole square, but it's at the very top of the square here, and then it goes down. And it's like a wavy, and it comes to a point. So I can indicate there's a little flag at the top of that mast right there. Okay. So, maybe I can bring this over to the close-up. Oh bring this over to the close-up and let's see. Okay. I'll turn a little bit so you can see that what I've done. So basically, what I've done is I've transferred the boat shape onto the watercolor paper. This transfer, and what I want to do is to capture the main shapes, the sails, the masks, where the connections were on the beams that hold the sail, and then also the shape of the boat, how it's sitting in the water, and also where the horizon line is, and some of the waves that are going to be in the water. So I'm going to, and the clouds I can put those in later on, but right now I can indicate clouds and maybe sky when I do the watercolor painting. But I got the basic shapes on the watercolor, and then what I'll do before I start painting tomorrow, I'll erase probably 75% of these lines on here. The watercolor will cover some of them, but I'll take out some of the lines that may show before I start painting. And also indicate okay, let me see here. Got a question. For buildings, 3D shapes or with lines, do you prefer the grid lines or use a ruler? Well, the grid lines are your reference points. You use a ruler to draw your grid lines. Okay, if you're doing a building, you would use the grid lines. Let me come over here and now I want to close up here. First of all, if you're going by a picture of a building or whatever it is, a building, in this case it's a boat, or even landscape, or even a still life. If you were doing a still life of a bowl of fruit or a basket or something, it's all the same thing. So what I'm going to do, so the grid, what I do is I'm going to just take an imaginary building that I have. I start with drawing. That's why the C-Thru ruler is so nice, because it's very easy to use. You find what size you want, number one, and that's why I partitioned this off. Let's say your picture is. You start with a size that you want to use. You determine how big you want your drawing, depending on the picture. Now here's an example. Here's a small picture of a sailboat. Okay, but that's too small. So if you want to expand this to a larger drawing or a larger picture, then you would have your grid lines on here, and I could put the grid, for example, on this. And I'll show part of the grids here. You see how the grid lines cross? And where they cross, depending how big you want to make your drawing, as I showed you here, you can double the size. In this case, it'd be very easy to double the size. You look at the size of the boat. Let's say in this case it's 1, 2, it's 3. On the drawing, it's 3 inches high. So here, I've got 6 inches, so that's the difference. And let's say it's 6 inches. So really, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I can draw a straight line with a ruler. Okay, that's my first line. I've got it broken up into 6 inches, and this is 3 inches over here on the grid. So then, with my C-Thru ruler, I just move this line up. And I draw the next line. And I take the next line and draw the next line. Now if I want to go the other way, I got this. Make sure you you can use a square or something to get it straight, or approximate with your eye. That's close enough. Again, you get your 1 inch, you go this way, and this C-Thru ruler is 1 inch wide, and so forth. So you would draw your grid on the paper, the size you want to make your drawing. Now, your reference grid, in this case, this is 3/4 inch. You can find other grids that are different sizes, but I'm going to use these grids to expand the size over here. So for each mark on here, there's going to be a corresponding mark over here. So that's 6 inches here, for example, which represents the 3 inches here on the picture. If I start in square 1 and I draw 1, 2 over, okay, that's the bottom of the sail. And the top of the sail is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to start down here. I start down here. 1, 2, 3. I go over 2, and I go up 6. So that 3 inches now becomes 6 inches, and then I can approximate the width down here. That's about 1.5 squares. You can see here that's 1 square. Square and a half for that. So it would come over 1.5. And actually, then you connect the shapes in on your grid. Okay. Now, if you were doing a building or something else, then you just follow the same rules. You put the grid, your reference grid, on top of that shape or picture, and then you would transfer it to your drawing paper or your color or watercolor paper, or whatever. As long as you have a grid and you're referring it to another grid somewhere else. So you're making something larger, and you could also make something smaller. This proportional drawing here, I could pick up something here, and if I have the right proportion, I can draw it over here. You can do it with a portrait. You can do faces and animals and so forth like that also, the same way. Oh, okay. Now, for a 3D grid, you're talking about dimensions. So the dimensions in the values that you put down, and in watercolors, you go from light to darks and so forth. So a three-dimensional drawing is really, the grid is, you want to match, the grid will give you the dimensions or the location of points, even on a three-dimensional. If you were doing a square, and you were going back in depth, so even a three-dimensional picture, you could still find the point. You still measure the point. The grid's here, here, and then you approximate the grid back here by whatever the grid shows on the reference photograph, or reference diagram, or whatever you're following. Your point here, you match it to the point over here, and then it will give you the correct angle and the correct size and proportion. That's what a grid transfer is, a good way to keep your proportions realistic and make them look real. Okay. It's your choice. It depends on how much experience you have on drawing with freehand or grids. I do. Here's a drawing here. I did this drawing here freehand, just for practice yesterday. Again, as long as you have the problem with freehand is you just have to really have a good eye for the angles and the sizes and the shapes. So that just takes practice. And you start out with something simple, and then you go from there. You start out with a square box, and then you go to a three-dimensional, something else that's three-dimensional, or something round, or something with a shape to it. But you go from one level to another. You start with some simple shape, and then add on to that as you get more experience. Okay. Okay. I think that's about all I had to show tonight. Are any more questions I can go with? Let's see. It's a good exercise to take a picture of an object and then to draw a grid on it. If you have a grid like this lay on top, that's fine. Or you could just draw a grid right over the picture. There's nothing wrong with that. Just draw it very lightly. Just draw your grid. Draw your grid with a ruler over top and make it a certain size. And then whatever you transfer it to, you'll have another grid. And then every mark on this grid here will correspond to a mark over here on this grid. Just as long as you make them square. Okay? In this case, these were square 3/4 inches, and I moved them to a square 1 inch. So that expanded. Really, what happened here was I multiplied this size by 1/3. So if you look at the math, 3/4 inch to 1 inch. What I did was I expanded that by 1/3. So so this one here, I expanded by, so if I took 3/4 and multiplied by 1.33, you'd get 1. But the point is, I did. Okay. Yeah, there's my freehand sketch there. Okay. And it's a little light here to see. I was trying to make it as dark as I can, but darkening it is fine because I'm going to paint over this tomorrow anyway. But those are the masks. Those are the sails. And when I do this in watercolor, I'll probably define these again. This is sail number 1, the big one in the back, and then sail number 2 with a cross. There's a mask. There's a little sail up the top. This is a little sail, a little curve to it. And there's a little sail inside here with another beam, and then the little jib on the front of the boat, which is connected to the bow. Okay? And then the boat was sketched in. And so, that's the name of the sketch. Okay, what it does, let me go back to my main camera. Okay, that is a good exercise for drawing. And the reason I did that tonight is I'm going to paint it tomorrow with watercolor. So I thought tonight would be a good chance for me to sit here and prepare for tomorrow. So you're looking over my shoulder as I was drawing my drawing for tomorrow's painting. But I use the grid system. I don't use it all the time, but this is a little more complicated subject because of all the angles and the different sizes. And I wanted to make sure that they were proportional, because all those sails have to look good if you want to have a good looking sailboat. So that's the only reason a grid would be useful, is you want to be really careful about your proportion and sizes. If you're just drawing for fun or just drawing to get an idea, then a freehand sketch is fine. In fact, freehand is probably 90% of my drawings. I do freehand. I train my eye to estimate the shape, estimate the size, estimate the dimension, and so forth. The most critical thing about drawing is deciding how big you want to make your subject. That's probably the biggest decision you have to make. You're going to be on a 9 by 12 sheet of paper. You're going to go by 8 by 10, whatever size pad you have. Then you want to make sure you lay out the big picture of how much room you need on your pad or on your drawing pad to do the drawing, to include all the elements of your subject. And once you've laid that out and got that thought out, then it's just a matter of starting somewhere, and then start with the big shapes, like I did the big sails first, then add in the smaller details after you get the big shapes in. And then you can add in more detail as you like. Put as much detail as you feel like doing. And then comes the shading and shadowing and so forth. And that gives it the shading and shadowing will give it the third dimension that you want to see sometimes in a drawing. But a two-dimensional drawing is fun. It's a good way to get started. Okay, well, hey, I enjoyed you all shared a little either with me tonight, and you had some good questions, and continue on coordinating and continue on sending me questions if you have those, and try some more drawings and so forth on your own. I got some input tonight. I'll get back to those that submitted me questions and so forth. So you all have a safe evening and a safe tomorrow. We're all still stuck in the house, trying to stay safe and taking care of each other. So you all take care, and I'll be back again tomorrow evening, or tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock, and I'll be doing a watercolor painting. And I'll be painting this sailboat that I drew tonight. And then I'll be again going back on Thursday. Thursday I've got, I'm going to do rainbows. I'm going to do rainbow on Thursday. Painting the rainbow, different. I'm going to have fun with watercolors and do rainbows. And then on Saturday I'm going to do a paint along. It's going to be a little it'll be fairly easy to do. It'll be a building and a roadway and some trees and so forth. But a little farmhouse, a little barn, I think it'll be interesting. So that's the setup or the layout for this week. So thank you for joining in with me, and I'll see you in the next video.